Okay, first of all, I welcome each of you, but welcome as a collective to Charleston, South Carolina. We're all quite proud of the work we do here, the facility, its newness in the company. This is a brand new workforce. It's brand new to aerospace in many respects. They've been through a lot. They've seen ups, they've seen downs, they're back on and up. But it's an incredible workforce, resilient, smart, totally engaged, ambitious, all the things you want, About December of just this last year, we celebrated an order from United for up to 200 of these 787s, a major commitment. I mention that not just because of the numbers of airplanes and its importance to our company, but if you could have seen the celebration, because we do these with 3,000 to 5,000 of our people out here on the floor with the airplanes parked just outside the hangars. And it is a wonderful moment for everyone to celebrate. And if you think about what this workforce has been through for the 18 months prior, you can imagine the celebration that we had. And then not long after that, just about a month and a half ago, we celebrated an order from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Her Highness Princess Rima was here with us, along with some of our political representatives in South Carolina, to celebrate another order for the 787 from a newly established airline, Riyadh, and the former stronghold Saudia Airlines in the kingdom, for over 120 of these airplanes. And that was a very informed decision. It was globally competitive, and I believe at the end of the day, the reason and their choice for the airplane was the airplane itself and nothing else. And it felt that way from the beginning of the competition until the end. So that's a little bit of just the confidence factor that we've sort of rebuilt, reestablished here. Lane Ballard, who is way back in the back corner, has led this business throughout this whole period. Again, proud of him and his reach with all of our people to keep them as motivated as we can be. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes on me, because many of us have not ever met before. Some of us have. I became the CEO of the company at an interesting moment in time, January of 2020, when we had one existential crisis that we were facing that was self-inflicted, related to the MAX. As everybody knows, at that moment in time, we accumulated over 400 airplanes. They were on the tarmac, and we went through 3 rounds of expectations around certification or recertification of the MAX, and every 3 months we were disappointed as a company. I was a member of the board at the time, and so we finally got till the end of the year and sort of said we need to maybe take a fresh look at all of this and own up to whatever failures Boeing would have to own up to, and we have. But when we sat down in January, not only did we not pick another 3 months, we didn't pick any months. We basically allowed the FAA to determine for themselves when this airplane would be certified, and it took us a whole year. And we were patient, we stayed disciplined, we responded to every request, whether we liked it or not, because that's what you have to do at those moments in time. We got that airplane certified, so a year into my tenure. Since then, we now have, I think, 4 million flight hours. The MAX has returned one airplane at a time. That is the way we think about it. That's our philosophy. Each and every one of them has to be reliable, has to meet all those expectations. And when you're pulling them off the tarmac, having sat for a year or 2, or in some cases 3, as we progress, you got to be perfect at that. So that's what we've attempted to do. So far, so good. We're confident we can continue on that discipline. But that's a big part of what we've just experienced in the last couple of years. I think it speaks to the legacy of our company, our people, their commitment, their dedication, etc. You have to get tested every now and then. I wish it wasn't that way, but I think we've so far passed that test. Well, in the middle of all that, everybody knows the other existential crisis that landed on us, and that was COVID. And as a reminder, COVID started March of 2020, literally between our two biggest facilities in the Puget Sound, at a nursing home. That was the first case. So we were two of the first facilities that had to shut down in the middle of what was already a tough go for the Boeing company. Of course, you all know and have written about what happened to the aviation industry over the next 2 years. At that time, we guessed that the market would be coming back in that 23, 24 time frame. We guessed wrong, came back faster and stronger than we probably imagined it ever could. The demographics of the aerospace industry, those of you who have some depth and have written about demographics in aerospace, you know that they lean against us. We've got great experience, and it's a very important part of our industry broadly. But when that industry retires and/or is let go at a moment when 80% of the world's traffic is down, this is what happens. And so slowly, steadily, these supply chains are rebuilding themselves. And it's for everybody. It's at the airline level, all their employees, and it's at the manufacturer level, the assembler level, ourselves and our counterpart, and it's really difficult in the supply chain itself. As many of you know, we have a very large, very fragmented supply chain relative to most industries. Many of those suppliers make one part, and they're the only supplier that makes that part. And when they fall down and/or can't respond to a rate increase, we suffer. But we have to stay disciplined, we have to work with them. We can't just get mad at them. We can't call them out the price. We simply have to work with them. We have to help them get their workforces back to where they were. And it's not numbers. In our industry, it's not numbers. It's skills, it's talent, it's experience, it's people. This is where everybody is struggling. And every time you get together with a bigger industry group, and you're about to get together with the biggest industry group, you'll hear this, and you'll hear this message across the board. So when I've discussed supply constraints and a supply constrained industry, I think about it at two levels. The first level is, what is it going to take to get our supply chain to the rates we've already talked about? And I believe that's probably until the end of next calendar year before we can get to those kinds of rates and have a stable supply chain. And then with respect to meeting demand for airplanes in light of traffic growth and sustainability demands, then I think it's going to be the assemblers themselves who are going to constrain demand for some period of time. Might go out 5 or 6 years based on the orders that we're all seeing today. So it's not, why are people ordering airplanes out into the 30s now? Because they see the same thing. Because they see the same thing. So it's an interesting moment in time. I never imagined the industry could bounce back as fast as it has. I'm glad it is. On the other hand, we've got a lot of wrestling matches with a lot of our supply chains to get to where we need to be. And I think that's true across the board. In our case, it's across two boards. I will make a comment about the C919 because I should. I've been around the AVIC and the development of aerospace in China since about the year 2000, when we began talking to the regional jet builder about their regional jet, and we were talking to them about an engine from my former employer. And we went forward with that, and we worked closely with them. So I've watched them develop for now 25 years. That's about 10 years longer than most people expected in light of usually we extrapolate their success, instantly. It's hard. It's really hard. 919 is a good airplane. 919 will satisfy demands in China for quite some time. It'll take a while, a long while, to sort of build the production capacity that they need. In the meantime, the other two guys will keep investing in technology and moving forward as fast as they can. And the good news for everybody is that 3 providers in a growing global market of this size and scale should not be the most intimidating thought in the world. It just shouldn't. So for us to get overly anxious about that, I think is a silly prospect. We should stay focused on the competition we have, try to win that technology race, and as we do so, keep ourselves in the lead with respect to whatever China ultimately does. But China's our friend, they're customers, we've been around and we've been working with them for 50 years. We've loved it, we continue to love it, we continue to support them as they get their Maxes back in the air. And I expect things will move forward in a more constructive fashion with fits and starts in the political environment that we're in today. I've said to our investors, all the guidance I will give you will exclude them. Why do you do something like that? It's not because we turn our backs on them. It has nothing to do with it. It's because investors can talk themselves into, oh my gosh, what it would be like, what's life without China? Well, it turns out life will be okay. But it's not the way we want it, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Especially if you think about the world as being supply constrained. Because if it's a supply constrained world, and over 6 years you can't do anything with them, what do? You do it with everybody else. And yes, there's a change in mix and all that, but it's just, I think easy to think through these things if you step back far enough to do so. Anyway, those are my opening comments, and I'm more than happy to take whatever's on you, any questions that are on your mind. I'm sure there's a million of them. Yeah.
Recently, you've mentioned that there won't. Sorry. Andreas Spieth, German aviation journalist. Recently, you mentioned that Boeing would not bring out a next generation aircraft for this decade, probably next mid of next decade.
Yeah.
Some people also inside your company were quite disillusioned about that, and elsewhere also. I recently had the opportunity in Seattle to went to Auburn, to the archives, Boeing archives, and Mike Lombardi, the historian, told me there was a homework period before in Boeing, like before the 767 came out. Would you say this is a homework period again? And is the NASA Trust Brace Wing project, is that the most likely outcome which will result in a new aircraft model for Boeing next decade?
Yes, so again, for those of you who are historians in the industry, our pipeline's pretty loaded, right? We have 3 airplanes going through certification at once with the FAA. 2 derivatives of the MAX that we all know about, and the 777-9, and we have now the 8F, the freighter version of the 777. It's an enormous amount of work and scale to move through all of those certifications. So if anybody's worried about us losing anything with respect to the certification prowess that's required to move airplanes forward, I wouldn't. The term homework, I think it's a good term, except that our homework includes regular testing. So that technology that you refer to, we think we have a real shot at bringing that technology to bear on the next airplane. The program that we announced with NASA is generation 2 of what was an original sort of experiment in the wind tunnel to now putting it on a real airplane, watching it fly, and hopefully by 28, proving to ourselves that it can actually do the job. The technology allows for us not just to get more out of the wing aerodynamics, but also the engine that sits under it, because it provides for a bigger bypass. So there are a lot of reasons, why you do this. The work out here and our experience with advanced composites makes it possible. Makes it possible. That's how we get from here to there. So yes, that is our intention to work down that path. There are a lot of other technologies that we would also like to bring to bear, including something as close to autonomous as we can conceivably get at that stage, and we decide to call it the airplane. So yeah, there's a lot of homework going on, a lot of regular testing, so that if we decide to include it, it's mature enough to do so. But if you go back again in history, what it takes to launch an airplane, a meaningful airplane that makes a difference for a long period of time, it's a lot. I worked on a composite matrix for the engine on the 777, and it was designed for the airplane that we will introduce in 2 years. And we started work on that in the late 80s. And that is the technology that allows 2 engines to replace 4, ultimately, on that kind of carrier. So these programs have to be 50, 80, 100-year programs. They can't be 20 years. You'd never get a return on anything. And they can't be incremental because either guy can price their way to equilibrium if it's just incremental. Either guy can do that. So, anyway, thank you.
Hey, for our next questions, we have Jim and Jessica with Mike, so you can wait for that. And also, when it comes to you, you can just sort of introduce yourself as well. Okay. Al?
Hi, Alan Burns.
Hi, Al.
Any questions? Hosting all this. So if it's about 10 years before potentially all the airplanes, does that leave you playing a little bit of defense for the next 10 years, either in terms of pricing you just mentioned? Like I always worry or think about like a stretch version of the 1820 that might do the 8, the Max 8. So how does that, took over a very difficult time in history, and then so, what is the competition going to do to sort of stress you for 10 years?
Yeah. Maybe a couple of perspectives. Again, it's portfolio against portfolio. It's not any one line item because we've got our line items too, where the other guys already having to price the equilibrium. So we're not, I'm not worried about it at the portfolio level. The specific instance that you've described, I can't call out any strategies on the other side. But I'm not particularly worried about a Dash 8 and a extended 220. That does not give me heartburn. So if that's what they do. Now think about then what we talked about. Let's assume there's a new airplane in 2035. Let's assume the other guy's gonna do a new airplane by 2035. They're gonna have to do something substantial, right? It can't be incremental, it's gonna have to be substantial. If I can get the substantial, they're gonna have to get the substantial, and I suspect they probably can. Would you do something in the interim? Would you? That's the question for everybody. That's the question for everybody. Would you do something in the interim?
Sean?
Dave, John Ostrauer here. You talk about wrestling with this logic and the next year plus. And just in terms of your aerosystems for a moment, obviously you have the fitting issue. I'd like to just put that aside for a minute, because that's a short-term issue.
Yep.
I'm curious your thought. The last time you guys were ramping up to 47, 52, those high, really high
Yeah.
rates, Spirit had a lot of trouble. When things were really good in the industry, there was no COVID, there was a bounty of cash flow down. I want to ask you about kind of the long-term arrangement and dynamic that you have with Spirit. Are you satisfied with the strategic arrangement that you have currently? Is acquiring either Spirit or Spirit Boeing's ongoing operations of interest? Is that something that we need to do to meet the numbers and targets that you have set forth for Wall Street over the next several years?
Yeah, so I'll answer the last one first, which is a no. Don't have a desire to do it, and so forth. Our relationship with Spirit is constructive. Our engineering teams work closely with one another. Oh yes, we are disappointed with every next issue that occurs that limits our rates and slows us down from getting where we need to be. On the other hand, I've never seen more collaborative engineering work going on between a supplier and a manufacturer as I am right now. So, in my view, whatever confidence I would have if I bought them, why would I have more than I have now? If the engineers are truly collaborative and the company's willing to make the investments that they're willing to make. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's been rough and tough, and everything you said is accurate. But I believe the path forward is still a constructive path where engineers work with engineers. We get ahead of the manufacturing process capability gaps that we experienced out here and that we've experienced on the MAX. But those are solvable. Those are solvable. And I don't think you acquire a company to solve them.
All right, Val.
engineers. So I wanted to ask a bigger picture question about the MAX. You know, we're seeing air travel recovery proceeding. You guys just wrapped up a big order from Ryanair. You're scaling up MAX production, emptying out inventory. Hearing tomorrow about MAX 7 and 10 progress. So is there a path for Boeing to regain parity on narrow body sales against Airbus, you know, during your tenure? And how important is it that Boeing regains that 50% share of the market?
Not.
Not. Why?
I don't want to suggest that we can't do it, because I think we can. Most of the share losses that have occurred over the last 4 years, which are the ones that are really measurable, are because we couldn't deliver airplanes. And we still have a hangover from not being able to deliver airplanes, because I've got to go through sort of my compliance effort, which I'll repeat to everybody, requires as many hours to get every inventoried airplane back out into the market as the original assembly did. So I have a shadow factory that hopefully begins to shut down toward the end of next year. So it is really hard, and I will never make up whatever supply shortfalls we had over the last bunch of years. I think that is the lion's share of market share shortfalls. With respect to the competitions I've been involved in, I don't feel disadvantaged at all. And I've been involved in pretty much all of them. Yeah. What do you see when you're negotiating with somebody? Dash 8, Dash 10, whatever, Dash 7, fighting the A220? Seen it all. I've never felt disadvantaged, not for a minute, not for a minute. And I don't think we're the price aggressor. I don't.
All right, we've got Julie on the side here.
Hi, just to follow up to John's question on Spirit. They are in talks with their largest labor union right now, and potentially, you know, it's the first major talks they've had since 2015, potentially a strike. I mean, if it doesn't go well, later this month, I mean, worst case scenario, just as Boeing starts, you know, moving towards potentially the next rate break, how closely are you monitoring those negotiations? Are there contingency plans underway?
Hard to come up with a contingency plan. Really hard. So even if they try to get ahead of it by virtue of their current production, that will be measured in weeks, not in months. So we're supporting them in every way possible to get to a constructive answer. That's about it. That's all I can say. We're not representing them. We're not a voice in the table, but we're doing everything in our power to help them.
Thank you.
Yeah, Wolfgang Baumann, International Germany. I wonder what could have happened that each and every civil program of Boeing ran into troubles. Is that just the current situation that everyone faces, or is there a deeper root cause that led to all these developments, which were maybe led 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even with some strategic decisions, and how can it be solved? I mean, every program we have, even military ones, are in trouble, tanker and everyone. Yeah, what can be done?
Yeah, so there's a lot that can be done. I'll try to maybe level that playing field just a little bit. Everybody here has already forgotten about the 380. Any trouble on that one? So, with respect to commercial developments, my experience has been, I was on the 777 as an engine provider. I've been through all the MAX developments over the years. Could they all be done better? Absolutely. My assessment of things you would have done better is a little more time up front to save time in the end. Mostly the engineering work that goes on at the earliest stages, you just have to give it the time it takes and deserves to get it right. And then stop having to go through do-loops, right? So now, would I say that about any specific Boeing program, or would I say that about every program in aerospace? Probably the latter, just as someone who was supplier to it for as long as I was. There is definitely something that happened in defense. And it was a set of contracts and risks that I think with hindsight, the benefit of hindsight, you would never have taken. You just wouldn't have. And then what happens when you take a risk that's too big? Then you race, and then it gets worse. So that's just my general assessment. But if I think about the 777 development and where it is today, and I'll remind everybody, 777, everyone acts like it's an old airplane. It's a brand new airplane. And as I said, the technology that was most important to that, those two power plants, gets fully delivered on the latest version of that, as well as the freighter version. Now what's it going to compete with? 380's already retired, and the 47 just got retired. So the 777 will be there by itself in what I think is a reasonably large market. We can call it niche relative to the 37. I'm okay with that. But it's a reasonably large market, and I believe that airplane will compete on its own. But that's a little bit about just the time that's required, what it takes. Perfect? No. Perfect? No. But I've been around a lot of imperfect aerospace development programs in my life. Do I think this is in a significant way worse? Absent the MAX issue, and that was a real issue and never should have occurred, but it happened. So we deal with it, and we move forward, and we admit to it. Anyway, I'm pretty much okay, absent the defense programs that we're going to have to see through to the end. It reminds me in some ways of the A400. Yeah. Just every now and then you get your nose a little too far ahead of your skis.
We have a question over here.
Jim will go out to you, and then Jessica on the side.
Here, I'm from Poland. I'd like to ask, because there is an ongoing war in Ukraine, so I'd like to ask, would you consider investing more in like defense sector, for example, like Eastern Europe?
I'm not sure I got the full breadth of it. You're referring to our two engineering centers in, yeah. Our history, of course, in the Ukraine and in Russia was pretty stark. We had 1,000 engineers in Moscow who opened up a 1,000 engineer office in Kiev. That ended, of course, the day of the strike. And we are doing everything in our power to keep the Kiev office open. Moscow got shut down pretty much immediately. The Kiev team, believe it or not, shows up for work every day. And we're killing ourselves to give them work so that we can get back there as soon as things settle. And we, like our customer at Ryanair, we talked about wanting to get back there as fast as they could. We'll do the same thing. We'll do the same thing. Was that the question?
Poland establishing new facility or something like that?
So many of our people in Kiev went to Poland and were welcomed by their Boeing associates who were there. So the relationship between Kiev and Poland will be very important going forward.
Like in Rzeszów Airport, yes, so that's why I thought maybe Boeing would be considering creating some new facility over there.
Well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We need things to settle down. We like the collaboration between the countries now. That'll get better as we reinvest in Ukraine. But we need the world to settle down.
Scott Hamilton with Leah News. The heart of the market is gradually moving up. By 2035, it arguably could be 200 passengers is the heart of the market, 25. And with the 50-year program, you're going to be up to 250. So the next new airplane, whatever it is, do you see that as a single aisle or a twin aisle? And that leads to the second half of the question. Your joint venture with Embraer had them looking at and responsibility for 100 to 150 seats and Boeing above that. What's the status of the arbitration? Could we see that joint venture revisited?
We are in arbitration as we speak, so I can't comment one way or the other. I think that strategic demands that surround that deal, or less, not more. My view of the single aisle twin decision is a decision for later, not for now. And I say that because if I say to my team, make that choice now, guess what happens? We develop that airplane just like middle of the market. Everybody runs full speed. Can you imagine what our life would be like if we had a middle of the market airplane in full development right now? Without any of these new technologies embedded in them. Imagine what that would look like. All the constraints on the industry, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be patient. You have to get the ducks lined up. The technology's lined up, matured, and then whatever they cater to with respect to that next airplane, it's got to be a big enough market to satisfy our investors. So I really don't want to get to that question until other things are ready.
We had question that kind of schools from France. As an American citizen and aircraft manufacturer, what is your analysis of what's happening in Europe around aircraft pressure, green pressure on aircraft? Whether the last example was eBay. You got some people who clinch themselves to aircraft. It was not the BBG, it was the Gulfstream. It could have been the BBG. How do you see the movement? It's just a temporary sequence pushed by a minority of European citizens, or something that will be installed in the
Yeah, it's no, it's a great question, and it's real. I think there will be movements, maybe a steady number of movements over the decade or two ahead of us, depending on how we respond to the sustainability demands, how we respond to a 2050 objective. If we look like we're working hard on it and making progress against it, I think some of those arguments will wane or slow. If we don't have sustainable aviation fuel, if it doesn't rise to 50% of every next fuel load over that time frame, then we're going to be subject to harsher critics. So the good news for me is this industry, unlike energy, which has such few options with respect to the scale that's required, we have options. We really do. And we can measure every day, and you'll see that with our sustainability team when they talk to you. We can measure the improvement we made between last week and this week. We know every airplane, every motor, how much fuel it takes. We know all of that, and we can measure it. So our job is to go about the displacement. We have sustainable aviation fuel is the big one. That's the one that moves the numbers. And then the question will be, because we'll have lots of formulations, I'm already confident there are plenty of formulations. What is the feedstock? What feedstocks ultimately support the industry? And I think it's all going to boil down to that. But we have a lot of time to get that right. And I hope we can keep the policymakers maybe a little ahead of us, but not too far ahead of us. Otherwise, we run into some of the pitfalls the energy industry has run into.
All right, we'll go to Sean over there, and then Vicky on the front row will be next.
Hi, Sean Browder from Aviation Week.
Okay, where are you, Sean?
So you mentioned in your opening remarks, you were on the board at the beginning of the MAX regulatory reexamination. So the question is, how has board member and maybe even senior leadership visibility into certification programs changed in the last 3 years?
I don't want to draw references to what it was then versus now. I will tell you this. I don't think a board could be more involved in a set of safety programs or certification efforts than the public board. I don't think it's possible. And we have really knowledgeable people doing it. Really knowledgeable people who have done it most of their life. So I think if you wanted to judge sort of that, and sort of you can take it at face value, the team that we have, working on a newly established committee in those 3 years, to go deep on safety and deep on certification relative to where it was and the kinds of talents available to the board prior to this moment. You can probably just look at that at face value and suppose exactly what's changed. But I can tell you this, this committee is deep. They see everything, they see it firsthand, they see it as fast as I do, and they're really good. Really good.
Jim, let's see on that side, right behind you, and then.
I'm a journalist from Poland. We are in a group of experts here, and it's been a while since Max returned to service, so I was surprised when I got the message that was like this: I'm flying on holidays to Max, and I'm scared. Is it safe? And I thought I will ask you this question: what you would like to say to that kind of passenger? And the second one: how many years will it take for passengers to forget about Max case and trust Boeing?
So, for me, I can give you a technical answer, you won't like it, but the notion that people still worry about that and or question their trust with our company, the notion that that's still out there somewhere, I accept. I only know one way to resolve it. Perfect transparency. You gotta know every day, everything we what's going on. And boy, is it uncomfortable. Our investors hate it. They hate it. But you have to do it. And I think we lead the world on that front, because we have to. So with transparency, a philosophy around every next airplane has to be perfect, has to meet the reliability standards, has to meet those safety standards, and our simple trust in the design itself is having that the safety standard. Otherwise, no one will let it fly anyway. So I just think that's how it has to progress. We win this one airplane at a time, and we're not done. We're not done. And that's how we talk about it inside the company. I could give you statistics that would suggest we're already there, but I don't buy that, because it hasn't affected our customers' loads at all, not a bit. And what irony of it is, the first airline to fly was Gold, and they never started when they came on board. So, does that give me faith? Yeah, but let's go back to where we started. I agree with you. We just have to keep on.
All right, Steve. Oh,
And you're next.
it's both of you.
Yeah, but both.
Okay.
Hi, Mikey Levy, Israel. Since Airbus acquired Bombardier aircraft, what solutions are you providing for airlines looking for smaller aircraft for regional flights?
We're really not. We have the Dash 7, that's our lowest gauge, and it'll stay that way. I think if you look at the market in its entirety, that would not be my first priority, to build the next airplane. It's a little back to the question around the original premise for Embraer. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be going headlong into that, unless you consider our electric opportunities, which are farther out and even smaller in nature. But I'd rather approach it from that standpoint than approach it from, a bigger plane down.
Thank you.
Tom from Israel Aviation News. So you mentioned the retirement of the jumbo planes, saying that airlines are reactivating the 380. Allegedly, an airline yesterday announced it will start operating transatlantic with 380. Emirati Airlines doesn't skip any opportunity to say that they will need a 500-seater in the future. Does any thinking around it, any discussion, or?
We are in favor of going big, and we're disappointed that we're not delivering more 777s today, which is why most of what you just described is happening. And so Our objective is get these airplanes certified, build a rate on the 777, and then I think we're going to satisfy a large piece of demand. And I think I don't want to speculate about competitive thoughts, but my guess is the other guy thinks about that market the way I think about that little market.
All right, we have time for one more.
Hello, my name is Yosuke. I work for Nikkei newspaper. And I wanted to ask about NMA again. And you said there are lots of stuff in the pipeline, and it's going to be in the future. But still, I wanted to get an image of how much carbon fiber CO2 conference could be used since these tier one companies are big in the industry, and will be something like 787 and carbon fiber will be used, or Japanese tier one will be marginal like 737 Max.
So I'll go back to sort of where we started, because that was really the question. I think I tried to answer. That middle of the market airplane, we're not going back to whatever that design was. I never even looked at it. We're simply going to continue to progress with the technologies that we have available to us. You mentioned composites. Hard for me to imagine us now taking full advantage of everything we've learned on advanced composite. I have no doubt that'll play a pretty significant role. All things with respect to autonomy and flight controls, that runs full speed, and this transonic truss-braced wing is also a very important technology to us as we go forward. That would not lend itself to something at the sort of the high end of the seat capacity. So it's that's the best I can tell you. I know everyone would like me to stand up here and design a new airplane for you, but that's not going to happen.
All right, Dave, thanks so much. We run past time. Thanks so much for your time today.
I appreciate everybody's time. I try to be as candid as I can. I want you to know we're really committed to this word transparency, because it goes right to the heart of the discussion we had with respect to trust, and not just with the flying public, but with regulators and everyone else, including media. So keep asking questions. You may not like all the answers, but I appreciate it. Thank you.